The Prime Minister, meanwhile, heading to the Pacific. Nations there are wanting a stronger commitment from Australia on climate change, talking about coal here specifically as well. To what extent should we be listening to and heeding that message?
Well, look, I think we should be under no illusions here, Tom. The money that the Prime Minister has promised is money that's diverted from an ever-increasing foreign aid budget that's been cut by $11 billion by this government. The promise that the Prime Minister has made to the Pacific leaders does nothing to address the real issue of climate change and really does nothing to show Australian leadership on this. Now, leaders in the Pacific Islands have repeatedly stated the impact that climate change has on them and called for leadership in this space. I think it's not enough. I think we are, I guess we're supposed to be thankful that the Prime Minister didn't walk in with a big old lump of coal to his meetings with the Pacific leaders, but I think Australia really does need to take leadership here, including leadership in the domestic sense.
Well, what does leadership mean? Because the biggest issue from the perspective of Pacific Islands is not how we, for example, run our country, but the exports, particularly of coal that we send to other countries. Isn't Labor supportive of all of those coal exports, or do you have some concern about how big this will be in future years?
Well, I think Labor is also supportive of a renewable energy sector, and this is something that the government has failed on time and time again. They've failed on having any kind of policy around renewables. We've got business leaders, we've got innovators right here in my electorate of Cowan. We've got innovators who are waiting for some kind of certainty from the government about a renewables policy so that they can get to the work of alternative forms of energy. In the last government, they had failed time and time again with the so-called NEG to come up with something that would please everybody in their caucus. We still haven't seen anything from the government in this regard. We still don't have a comprehensive policy domestically on renewables, on energy, and certainly not on climate change, Tom.
The NEG, though, covers what we do here in Australia, or would cover that. We're talking here about coal exports, and that's one of the concerns of Pacific Islands leaders. What do you say to those concerns and what Australia should do in response?
I think we should look into what we're doing and how that impacts. And I disagree, Tom, that what we do domestically doesn't impact on those around us. It certainly does have an impact on those around us. At the very least, it shows leadership in this regard. It shows that Australia is doing something and that it leads the way in this regard. If we are taking our place on the regional stage as a leader, and not just in climate change, but on a range of issues, then we need to have a strong domestic policy. What we do here matters.
Right, so do more here. And what about when you say look into the export side of things? Should we be having a discussion? Should we be having an inquiry, whatever it might be, about whether all the coal in the Galilee Basin should be dug up?
I think we should have a discussion around this. I'm never averse to having a discussion around these and looking at the impacts of what we do here, including our exports and what that means for our neighbours. But again, I would stress that we have individuals and organisations who are waiting desperately for the government to come up with some kind of comprehensive policy around energy that includes renewables. We have options available to us here in Australia for sources of energy that we are not being explored and are not able to explore because we don't have the policy settings because of this government's failure.
Can I ask you finally just about the issue of press freedom, or in fact on the other side of that, but there's an inquiry going on. When it comes to whistleblowers, Mike Pizzullo, Home Affairs, of course, Secretary, says the leaker to Annika Smethurst should go to jail, that leaking these secret documents, even though they don't appear to endanger national security per se, it has a big impact on how the department can operate. Do you agree that jail would be an appropriate outcome?
I think we need to really look at what we and how we protect press freedoms and whistleblowers. This is a cornerstone of democracy, a cornerstone of the kind of democracy, the democratic tradition that Australia has enjoyed for centuries. Labor has consistently made attempts to ensure that whistleblowers and press freedom is protected in the laws. The fact that the government has diverted this inquiry to the PJCIS, meaning that they can only deal with a very narrow terms of reference and have a very narrow mandate on this, says a lot about the government's commitment to press freedom and to the protection of whistleblowers. I don't agree that whistleblowers should go to jail. I think that we need to cherish and protect our press freedoms, particularly when it comes to the public interest.
So in terms of whistleblowers not going to jail, is that a blanket opposition to that? I mean, presumably it has to depend on what's happened, the nature of the leak and so on.
Well, yes, but if we have a look at the recent incidences that we have, I don't see there that there has been.
So the story, for example, that Annika Smith has published, whomever leaked that, you wouldn't agree with a pursuit of them and a punishment of going to jail?
No, I wouldn't agree with that. I think that if something is in the public interest, the press has not just a right but a responsibility to report it and to protect their sources. This is part of what we enjoy as part of Australian democracy. I think also having this inquiry as part of the PJCIS means it can only look at it through the lens of national security. Press freedom is much larger than just national security.
Anne Aly, always appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Tom.